Chair Watson and myself are here in the boardroom. And so we'll call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock precisely. Chair Watson will be monitoring chat for us. So please use chat. And we'll do roll call. So Emma will get us going on roll call. All right.
Thank you, Chair. Please acknowledge your presence as I call your name, and remember to mute your mic, unmute your mic, and then remute after you responded. Director Newell.
Present.
Director Jackman.
Good morning, Emma and all.
Director Tierney.
Good morning.
Director Watson.
Good morning.
Director Graham.
Present.
Director Hanegraaff.
Present.
Director Weatherhead.
Present.
Councillor Dumas.
Good morning.
Director Vandenberg. Director Vandenberg.
He won't be in attendance.
Director Cunningham.
Not present.
Director Popov.
Won't be either.
CAO Horn.
Good morning.
General Manager Wolf.
Present.
Manager Diblakovsky. Present. Good morning. Eileen Stenick. Good morning. Present. Natalie Nick. Present. Dana Ekman. Present. Emma Clark. Present. Nancy Metz. Anybody present that I have not acknowledged? Okay, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. So there's 3 directors?
Correct.
4? Cunningham?
3 directors.
So you do have quorum.
Okay. And Director Davidoff is there?
No David off.
No Cunningham? And no Popoff, no Vandenberg. So
David is not part of this committee yet. Yeah.
oh, he's an observer. That's correct. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We have been called to order. We have done roll call. We do have quorum. And our traditional lands acknowledgement statement is that we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda with Chair Watson, and it's seconded, I see. Thank you very much. Are there any additions? Anything anyone would like to add, discuss, share?
We're good online.
Pardon me?
Just let me know no one online's.
No one online is offering anything. So, is there any opposition to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, we have adopted the agenda. The minutes, were there any comments on the minutes from our April 3rd meeting? Seeing none, those will be forwarded to the board. And we now move on to item number 3, agenda item number 3, which is the 2024 Water and Wastewater Systems Acquisition Plan and Evaluation Matrix. And before I turn it over to staff, Alexandra, we are behind the scenes in great detail talking. We think what we're going to do is have the recommendation that's presented in the agenda severed so that we have 2 recommendations. So we'll deal with the approval or not of the 2024 Water Wastewater Acquisition Plan as amended, and as a separate recommendation, then talk about the existing moratorium and our move in that direction. We didn't want to confuse the 2 items, so we felt that that might be an okay way to go. So I'll turn it over to Alex, please.
Thank you, Chair Newell.
Yeah.
So we are presenting the 3rd draft of the 2024 Water and Wastewater System Acquisition Plan and Evaluation Matrix. You can see in section 2 the background analysis, the timeline. of what staff has done to date and the presentations to the Water Services Committee. If we move to the following page, there were 5 verbal comments or requests from our last meeting from the various directors. In gray are staff's responses to those questions, and I'll just pause here for a moment to see if there's any further clarification or questions around that.
Yes, so, thanks, this is an excellent time to just pause and see if people are reflecting on that, having read the report, other thoughts. Of course, there'll be ample opportunity to continue that conversation. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. So staff has made some minor edits to the plans that should read third draft. We've attached both the red line copy and a clean version of the draft. At this point, before I move into the various options, the 2 options that we've listed, is there any questions around the edits that were made to the third draft?
Seeing none, we'll move along. Of course, there's always ample opportunity for discussion. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, so the 2 options staff are presenting today. Option number 1, to approve the 2024 water and wastewater system acquisition plan as amended, and further that the existing moratorium on acquiring new water and wastewater systems be rescinded, as Chair Newell had pointed out. That's open for discussion to break into 2 separate recommendations. The advantages to this, the plan incorporates the experience gained from acquiring 9 community water systems and operating up to 19 community water systems and 1 drainage system since 2010. Guidance provided by the plan is up to date and relevant and has more stringent application requirements than was required under policy 600-0304. The plan also supports the recommendation from the Provincial Health Officer's Drinking Water Report. As an attachment to this agenda package, we've included the letter from the Provincial Health Officer's desk, and in that it speaks directly to recommendation 12, which is the point being made here as an advantage. The disadvantages or cons, the applicants will have to meet a more rigorous application requirements. Option number 2, we do not approve the 2024 water and wastewater acquisition plan and continue to use the water and wastewater system acquisition policy, and further that the existing moratorium on acquiring new water systems, wastewater systems remain in place. The pros are less staff time spent towards the acquisition process, and the cons is obviously does not support the Provincial Health Officer's recommendation 12 out of their report.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexandra. All right, questions, curiosities?
Graham and myself on the speakers.
Okay, Director Graham, please go ahead.
Thank you and good morning, and thanks for all this great work. And my question is really regarding the fact that this whole thing is called a wastewater and water and wastewater. So my first question is, does the RDCK currently have any wastewater systems anywhere?
Staff?
No, we do not have a wastewater system. Why it is mentioned in here is that we had all along applicants to take on wastewater systems. So in total, we had discussions with at least 3 interested parties, 4, about potential acceptance of wastewater systems. We did evaluate one, and at that time reject that system because of financial unsustainability issues. But we try to be fully inclusive of all of these issues with the plan or possibilities of interested parties and wrote it in a way that both wastewater systems and drainage systems, because we own one, are included in the plan.
Supplemental, please,
Yes,
through
go
the chair.
ahead, please.
Okay,
Yes.
so, because when I'm going through this report, to me, it seemed like it was all focused on drinking water and potable type of water and that. And I really didn't see much in it regarding wastewater. And so it kind of came to my brain that I just didn't know if like all the acts and all the regulations and all the wastewater stuff was really part of this thing. And if we don't have a single one, I just wasn't sure if this is the right place to do this like right now as we're trying to do something new. So that was just a comment, I guess, more than a question.
Go ahead, Uli.
It's a good point, but we see this document as well as a living document that we improve as we go, as we learn things. The other component in the background that's happening more on the resource recovery world is that we in fact do have septic waste facilities and that we have statements in regards to acceptance of our resource recovery plan that say the RDCK requires a liquid waste management plan. So there is a realistic chance that we will be forced to A, have a liquid waste management plan, or B, if not that we own septic facilities that are treatment facilities and not straight out unmanaged, in a way, unmanaged lagoons. So that's another component in the background that we are trying to be ready for, and that may change business that we do on the utility side, because should it get in this direction, it will be staff's suggestion that wastewater facilities in any form are being managed on the utility side and not on the resource recovery side.
Yes. Supplemental?
Yeah, just thank you through the chair. So I'm just concerned that we're opening the door to wastewater with this when it doesn't seem like that's really, like there's been zero real discussion about it. I think I haven't heard any, that it's all been sort of about water systems and, drinking water and water users and that. And I just don't know if this is the right place where this wastewater should be here, or this should be part of like just this whole thing. That's just my comment, just because I don't know anything really about wastewater systems, and I don't know if this would be the right place for a community to start applying for one. So I just don't know this thing should be called wastewater. I guess I'm questioning the title. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Director Watson. I do have a speakers list just to update everyone. Watson, Weatherhead, Jackman. Please go ahead, Director Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I'll note on the wastewater that we have actually with the liquid waste management requirements for local governments, that is something that is looming. And so this wastewater being a part of this plan is a step towards requirements that will be coming to us. It was probably about 10 years ago that was in front of us. And at the time we did not develop a liquid waste management plan, but we will be required to eventually. Our septic fields are hitting capacity, and the more that, I was the area that had a wastewater system that has been tried to get into the RDCK. They were declined for the reasons Uli had indicated. We've since provided them community works funding, thanks to Uli's great efforts to get asset management included in their thinking. So we essentially did a ton of consulting and supported them to figure out the right way to do it, and kept them outside of us because we also had a moratorium at that time. So they will get to a point where they could be at a level where we can acquire them. And when it comes to managing a wastewater system as a small community and remote geography, the province will they won't get more funding. They'll ask us to take it over. So we don't have any in the queue right now. We don't have anybody waiting, but they definitely have been there, and it's not a new conversation. So that's just on the wastewater component. I think this is being tied together. My question is actually around the staffing component. My understanding, and I'm going to reiterate how I understand this, let me know if I'm incorrect. When it comes to an actual acquisition of a water system, part of the process as outlined in the plan will give us an idea of the financial requirements for that, which includes the operational staff. And it will include any of the overhead staff that all goes to the system itself. But the pre-planning of going through the acquisition process, that my understanding would go through rural administration as an overhead cost. So I think at this time, our policy on this does need to be updated. I see we would do that in August. I would highly recommend that, my big concern is that our ability to acquire water systems is just as onerous as a small system actually doing it themselves. I know the province wants local government doing it. It's easy for them. We're accountable. We're also not able to use volunteers. So the cost on water becomes very expensive at no fault of our own. But I think there's a fine line in terms of the cost of doing this. And so when it comes to the policy, I want reassurance that we're going to have really tight measures in place to what can we afford when it comes to those overhead costs to initiate an acquisition process. Limiting how many we would take on so we're not over capacity with our staff, which we currently are. So I do have concerns with lifting this moratorium from that perspective. But also that I'm still in favor of, and I know this goes against the province and this goes against what many professionals want, but my goal with most small communities that are too far removed from the main head office is to figure out how to do it on their own and support them to do so. And so that gap still remains for me in terms of that external consulting work that we're essentially doing through the community works process. So I would like to see, when we look at that policy, also an understanding of how do we support the systems that don't make sense to be acquired but are really struggling? How do we support them? And I know this is a repeat on that, but I'm not going to let it go. So that was really long-winded. Do I follow the process? Is that how it would work? And how would we put control mechanisms in it? So when we come to budget for rural admin next year, we're not like, well, we lifted a moratorium and now rural admin is going to go up significantly to address the process that doesn't get held within a water system. That makes sense.
So, sorry, was there a question?
The question is, am I following the process correctly? And can we ask that in the policy, when we review it in August, it includes capping measures to address the budgets that would be associated outside of a water system?
Absolutely.
And that we also still consider those systems that don't make sense to be acquired but are really struggling and how we support them.
Yes, and if I may add to that, a portion of the added cost for, or added staff time for the acquisition process is offset because all the last 2 years, I want to say, we had staff working towards this step now of potentially lifting the moratorium. So we developed plans, we looked at the matrix in detail, and so there was staff time already going in there. That has been now prepared and allows now more time towards the acquisition process itself.
Can I have a quick supplemental?
Yes, I'm just going to interject as chair. That is why I wanted to separate these two, because I saw them as separate issues. And so I thank you for raising it. And perhaps we can go into more discussion on the second recommendation, but please, supplemental, it's so important.
The supplemental is actually that I think there's an opportunity to house staffing support through the community works funding application that's specific to utility work. Because the amount of work we did with Ainsworth on their wastewater system, that required expertise that was you. We can't always call on you. So I think community works tends to be this like, okay, you're too remote, we're not acquiring you, but you need support.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be an avenue to look at. How do we have support staff in there that's expertise on wastewater, water systems specifically? Tangi was great with that, and our current staff are still great with that, but we really had to pull you in on some of that stuff. So I think that's an opportunity.
And
Go ahead, please, Uli.
if I may, through the
Yeah.
chair, and I think that's a discussion we should have at budget times, because this was raised earlier about ongoing support to systems that either are not there or not interested to become an RDCK system from our side in form of expertise, or even just outlining, connecting them to the right professionals in certain ways. I think we are as staff prepared to do so, we need to quantify is to what extent do we want to go, and can we do it with the existing staff, or do we get at some point to the threshold where we need to add a staff in order to be able to do that? Currently, with what we are doing and proposing, we are proposing to do this with the existing staff. So in fact, if we spend more time on the acquisition processes, we actually spend less time on the existing water systems. In part, we feel comfortable doing so because many of the former issues have to some degree been addressed and become a bit more routine. So processes have been developed and that. But again, we will have that discussion as part of the, in my mind, as part of the budget discussion, and clearly formulate what the expectations from the directors are in regards to outside support.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. A lot to process as we've been going through this for the last 10 years, and it remains interesting. Thanks for that, Uli, and that explanation. Director Weatherhead, please go ahead.
Thank you, my mute button. Okay, thank you through the chair. I really appreciate the work that's been done on this policy, and I do support the two motions being separate as well. Some of it being along the lines of what Chair Watson is explaining, because those are ongoing and more upcoming issues that I'm facing in K. The other thing that I'm not finding, like within this policy, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm not really quite sure, but I have an ever-growing issue of all these rural, surrounding communities that do not have water systems, that are taking water from all of our water systems and also taking water from the Nakusp water as well. We had numerous water shortages last year. So, what I'm getting asked is what's Regional District going to do to help us get water when we cannot provide them water through these water systems because they're not a user, and they're finding ways to get the water, which is kind of fine. It's free, the water itself, but they're not paying for the system, and they would like something from the Regional District to come forward for them to offer them some type of water purveyor program, truck that drives around, fills up cisterns or what have you. And so my concern about lifting the moratorium is that how are we taking this on when we know this is provincial? I'm telling people this is, water isn't really, within our jurisdiction, but at the same time, if we are taking on water systems, how will we have something set in place to either help those rural communities or rural individual residents that are facing water shortages, or are we just locking all the standpipes and like we have had to do in Edgewood? It's like there's a real, it's just like creating a lot of friction in these communities. And I don't know how Regional District can support this, but I see this as an ongoing and ever-growing problem. And so that's my question. Sorry if it's long-winded as well.
If I may, through the chair. So typically to date, we have stayed away from emergency management in regards to water. So an example is the South Canyon water system that a couple of years ago ran out of water and had to start trucking water. Having said that, we are still in that gray zone where we do support systems like that. And one of the examples is that we have most recently kicked off the study for alternative water supply for the larger Creston Valley. So that's where staff is involved. Staff time is dedicated towards. We were able we wrote a grant application, we received a grant, and we are the leader. So Eileen is actually leading that project right now, leading that study that looks at an alternative supply for the larger region in to try to address these issues. So we are always pulled somewhat outside of our sole management of our existing RDCK water systems. We are doing that as well in regards to advice, but we do not actively manage the emergency. So we did not get into hauling water for that water system. And I don't think we have the capacity to do so if we get into severe drought situations. Then, as you mentioned, the example where we have people outside of a water system being used to getting water from that water system from public taps. Quite frankly, we didn't shut them down for drinking water supply. What we shut down was A, larger quantities being hauled, B, the health risk with standpipes that weren't regularly flushed, that didn't have any kind of disinfection protocol in place, and so in short, I think that is something that should be part of that budget discussion. How far do we go as staff to support non-RDCK systems or people, residential users outside of our water systems? But quite frankly, we will have to have a clear fence around that, how far we can go. Otherwise, I don't know how many staff we will need, right? It is a growing issue. Specifically, drought is a growing issue that we need to be aware of, and that we need to look at strategic approaches. And I think we are prepared to help out with that. But the tactical issues, when a well goes dry, when or the creek runs dry, we won't be able to manage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Alex, please, thank you.
Through the chair to Director Weatherhead. Back in March of 2021, we did send out a letter to the area residents regarding a request for interest in a pay-per-use filling station. And they were directed to contact myself when I was in Natalie's position, and we didn't receive any response in that. So that was, as Uli had mentioned, the potable water was allowed through the filling through a private or community-owned water tap. But and there was any interest in area residents outside of the water system in question to pay for and maintain a pay-per-use filling station. So that was sent out, and we didn't get any response from area residents and interest. So that was one step that we did take.
Yeah, thanks for that update. Thank you. Supplemental, Director Weatherhead?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that, Alex. I appreciate that. I do recall that. I think today it looks a lot different. I think you would get a response today, but because these more and more people are coming to me, and some of these situations are also long-standing, like a cistern in Burton, because they cannot tap into the Burton water system, yet they live right in the Burton area there, and they want to pay the annual bill to do so, but they're not allowed to due to the water situation. And so they're frustrated. They have to fill their cistern from somebody's water on an ongoing basis, and they have dug 3 wells on their land and cannot get water on their land, and they can't tap into the Burton water system. So they're stuck between being landowners and everybody around them being able to dig wells, and then the other neighbors around them being on the water system. And so there's this disparity. Some people want to be on it, some people don't. Some people want it chlorinated, some people don't. It's just like, again, my concerns are more about, these are issues, these are real issues that we're going to be facing more and more of. you know, depending on what type of water system that we're offering, and then or that we're taking on, I guess is more like it. And yes, I am happy to hear that there is this outside information surveying, or whatever is you call it, sorry, analysis being done toward a pay-per-use or some type of overarching system, because I can say right now, I need one right now in K. Thank you.
Yes, Uli will,
If I can expand on this, we have dealt with various issues of similar nature where people come to us and say, we would like water. Where most of these issues either went away or fell apart was when we presented the real cost to help them. And I think this is no different from the regular acquisition process. I'm sure we have a lot of systems interested in getting help from us, but as soon as we talk about the real cost to manage a compliant and sustainable water system, the vast majority of interested parties say, oh, then we go it alone. And so that cost issue, that general awareness of the public that the times are over where you can manage a water system for, and I take an example because I just looked at a Community Works application of a system that has a $300 annual fee and feels they are well funded. Not if you are trying to have a compliant water system, have money in place to replace your infrastructure when you need to, yeah, it's just not happening. And that's no different from these outside users that would like to have help when we talk about the real cost. And I think that was part of the Edgewood problem when we talked about the cost of a filling station that needs to be created for a relatively small quantity of water that's being purchased. They went away. We simply didn't have no interest left.
thank you. I'm going to move on to our next speaker, and this is so interesting, the complexities of water and the increasing complexities of water and how we fit in as an RD to the hundreds of systems that aren't part of our system. Very interesting. Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have 4 thoughts to share, and they don't all need responses whatsoever. First, I very much appreciate what Director Graham brought up around the wastewater systems. Fundamentally, I don't have any problem with this acquisition plan covering both. What we need to address will be the next 2, not one more motion. And when we get to it, we'll get into more detail. We need something to talk about a moratorium on drinking water systems, and something separate about maybe maintaining a moratorium on wastewater systems. So that we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Director Graham's issues, I think, can be solved by having 2 more recommendations, not one more after this. What would help for that, if a heads up for staff, can we get the exact wording when we get to that next motion of what our current moratorium reads? Does it even address wastewater or just drinking water? Next point, Chair Watson brought up interesting points about staff and costs and tracking. I see us as having a line item in the budget, just like we have like for legal costs in rural admin. If we have $50,000 and halfway through the year, the staff costs are, we're seeing staff flags it's up to 45,000. Well, we need to amend that or do something different. So I can see a line item, if this falls in rural admin, giving a staff allocation for this acquisition of systems, put a number in there. And when we get close to the number, we know that maybe we have to rethink what we're doing. The 4th point, the province is offering trivial money right now, $5,000 and $10,000 sort of planning grants and stuff. I view that as trivial. When they're the ones who actually created all of these irrigation districts, they authorized their creation. So I don't want to go too far down the path of bailing out the province with solving their issue of all these irrigation districts they authorized without substantial money. And somehow, maybe this is UBCM thing, we need to tell the province $5,000 is trivial. It may sound like a lot of money. Uli's point is exactly on the mark. People think $300 a year is all they need to pay for water. So $5,000 is a windfall. It's not, it's trivial. So we need to get that message through before we start going down the path of solving all the problems. So those are my thoughts. I like the policy. Discussion on the next two motions is the critical part.
You said 4 and I only wrote 3, wastewater, staff line item, and province. Did I miss one or did you
Well,
blame?
my second point is there will be 2 more recommendations. The first is I like what Charles brought up.
I see.
Valid points. There'll be 2 more motions. We'll have a line item, and let's not let the province dump this on us. And I realize
so
we're
number
being
1
recorded
was
by
1A.
Observer.
1A and 1B, I missed that, sorry. Okay, any more speakers that you've seen?
No.
Any more speakers out there?
That's it, as Gary works through his motions.
Pardon?
Sorry.
So
Someone's
Chair,
speaking
I
with
would
their
move
mouth
a
full. Yeah.
recommendation if I might.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest.
So Director Jackman has moved the first recommendation. In Syriana might be one of the terms we use. Sorry if I'm yelling at you. I don't know how loud to be.
No, it's perfect. So as amended, period. The board approved the water and wastewater
Yes,
system
yeah.
acquisition plan as amended, period.
Great, and Director Watson has seconded that. Is there any discussion on approving this revised and amended wastewater and water acquisition plan? Any opposition? Seeing any, pardon me?
I'm not seeing any.
We're not seeing any opposition, so the motion is carried. Are we okay? Good. All right, staff are on it. We've got it all sorted. So that's it. And there's another one. Does anyone want to perhaps move a second motion?
Jackman.
Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm willing to move a motion that the existing moratorium on acquiring new potable water systems be rescinded. The trouble is I'm not sure exactly what the existing moratorium says. So in the 3.5 minute staff had, has anybody had a chance to pull that up? Did we actually place a moratorium on water and wastewater? Or did we only ever place a moratorium on drinking water system acquisitions?
Thank you. We'll pause for a moment.
I recall it being both if you look at.
I thought so too, because all along, starting in 2009, we were handling water and wastewater systems. Like I said, we had discussions with various purveyors. We did at that point state to some of the interested parties, we are not ready for the wastewater systems. We want to first deal with the water systems. Interested parties were, i.e. BC Hydro, in a water system that we manage already. They have a wastewater system. We had a private development where we took over the water systems, but there's as well a wastewater system in place that was interested at the time. I don't know if they still are. We mentioned Ainsworth as one of the systems.
Sorry.
So
Point of process. Just to clarify, I think we just need the original motion to be clear that this motion is relevant to it.
yeah, but then, okay. I believe it was water and wastewater systems all along.
Yes. It was.
Okay, so it's
Okay.
both in the current moratorium. The moratorium is on both water and wastewater, Director Jackman. So please go ahead.
So then maybe staff or CEO or somebody can maybe give kind of the best process. We can rescind that previous motion and then we can do 2 more motions. One being that we would have a ongoing moratorium on acquisition of wastewater systems. And then the other one being that we will now be open to receiving applications for acquiring new potable water systems as of a certain date. So I think there's 3 pieces here then. If we need to rescind that motion, so that they're definitely split and issue 2 more recommendations. So I'd be looking to staff what the best, cleanest mechanism would be to do that. But if they're tied today, I think we should rescind the original motion.
Yeah, okay, yeah, just give us a second, Director Jackman.
Stuart's there if you want to ask.
Uli, go ahead, and then thank you. Yes, I saw CAO.
I think we would have to rescind the old one, re-establish a motion for moratorium on wastewater systems if you want to separate the issues. And yeah, that's it. I think that's the 2 different steps we would to.
You've rescinded the original motion, you've essentially lifted the moratorium. So
Yes.
then you're just placing a moratorium on that. But Stuart did unmute, sorry.
Correct.
Through the chair, I was just going to say that I think it makes total sense to separate these 2 issues based on the conversation you're having right now. There's no reason to keep them combined because it's just going to confuse things down the road.
Thank you.
Can I-
All right, so go ahead, Director Watson.
Stuart, can I just clarify the motion process? If we rescind the original moratorium motion, we've essentially then lifted the moratorium and we don't need another motion on the water system. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct, but I think with how long this has gone on and the debate the board has had, or at this committee and then at the board as well, I think it makes sense for there to be a statement that says the doors are now open again and you are considering new applications, as opposed to rescinding a motion that, Uli, correct me if I'm wrong, but that original moratorium motion would have been from 2012 or 2013. It's old.
Back to that.
Stuart, are you saying that besides rescinding, which we would need to do, we should have a positive statement that acknowledges we're open for business?
Through the chair, that would be my suggestion, just based on the length of time that, different board of directors honestly have struggled with this issue going back and forth. And I think it makes sense to have something that really states, yes, the moratorium, not only have we rescinded the old motion placing that moratorium, but that the regional district is now open to accepting applications.
Right. My next question in regard to, and I do see you, Director Jackman, so the chair's just wanting to ensure that he's clear enough to keep us on first. So, Uli, do we really need to worry about a moratorium on wastewater if we won't take it on because they can't meet the requirements, or should we?
I mean, you have the right to say no at any time. And this is, and in fact, to Stuart's statement, I would say that we have possibly state that we have lifted the moratorium and will accept water systems. I'm not sure that we should state right away that we take in applications. I think we should do a formal step towards that because I would prefer to have in August the updated policy in place that then guides existing or new applicants clearly and keep the ones out that clearly don't meet that policy. So if we can do that, I think that is the better time for us to formally accept applications when we have set the last piece of framework that we need for new water systems.
All right, so the chair is ruling that the motion on the floor or that the existing moratorium on acquiring new water and wastewater, the moratorium on systems be rescinded, does set us up for the next step in our communication, outreach, etc. And we may even then say we don't even want to deal with wastewater now, so we'll scrap it. But at this point, we maybe don't need to go into that much detail. Let's rescind it so that we can move forward if that's the wish of the committee and subsequently the board. So I would direct it, that's my kind of thing, that we've got a motion on the floor that's good enough for now. I think, Director Jackman, please, after my comments, please go ahead.
Chair, I agree with your comments that we do this motion to rescind. I do think we need at least one more component. And that would be the
Okay,
proactive
that's the-
statement, and that would have a
Director
date.
Jackman?
That would be
Director Jackman,
separate. I support this motion to rescind, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna pause and then we'll go to see if there's any further discussion on item number 3 and see what would arise. So we have a motion on the floor, moved and seconded, and that is the rescinding of the moratorium on both water and wastewater. Right? Okay, so calling the question, is there any opposition? Seeing none, we have, yes, go ahead, Director. Is that opposition, Director Weatherhead?
My apologies, Chair. I think that I may have gotten lost. So what we are rescinding now is not the first motion we just
No, the moratorium that's been in existence since 2012.
Okay, so if we rescind the moratorium on water and wastewater, it just, my concern is, and I don't know if we have time, when we'll have a discussion on this, but is just that I have a sewage system owned and operated by BC Hydro in Fauquier that is being that is actually in dire need of upgrades, and my concern is BC Hydro coming and doing what they did by divesting themselves to the regional district for 3 water systems. Now, might they divest themselves for a sewage system, because nobody in that community wants RDCK to take over that sewage system. So if we're lifting this, are we opening that door? That's just the only thing I wanted.
No, I think it's good to clarify.
Oh, yeah, we're in a vote, so this is, the chair is just wanting to make sure that we follow process mid-vote. We're now adjourning the vote, so we'll just pause the vote. And then we will go to answer a question that arose, matter of privilege, and go to the chair. Please go ahead and clarify.
I think it's, so in lifting the moratorium, that does not automatically require us to acquire any system. The board still have to say yes or no. There's a process in place now about what they have to follow. And I think there's still motions to review specifically around wastewater. I think I'm anticipating Director Jackman might propose we maintain the moratorium on wastewater and only focus on drinking water right now. So 2 different options there procedurally. Number 1, this does not put us in the position of having to say yes to any acquisition on any system at any time by lifting this moratorium. They still have to go through the planning process. And even if it's BC Hydro, we can say no. So I think that's a primary piece. This is just saying the door's open, here's the process. It's not a given. And that I think we do have another motion that we should entertain regarding capacity and where we're at when it comes to wastewater systems. So that would be, I think, a clear process.
Uli's going to add to it. Thanks, Chair.
And I just want to point out, in fact, part of the process is a very early stage of shortlisting applicants, bringing them to you to agree or not agree to that shortlist. So in a very early stage, we would read out, we're not going through a ton of work with an applicant system that we have no intent to proceed with.
Yeah. You also had Graham on the list?
Mid-vote?
Well, I think we went from.
I'm sorry if I missed people. Okay, we've adjourned the vote. We're just now getting some clarification and then we'll reconvene that part of the meeting. Go ahead, Director Graham.
Thank you through the chair, and sorry, maybe I was a little slow on the draw here on my putting my name in the chat. Just the only thing that comes to my mind here is the capacity issue, in the sense that we just lost our utilities manager recently that left. And so now we've got a new guy starting, which is great. That's awesome news. But I'm just wondering that in the future we see like, no, it's okay. We've got enough staff to handle this right now. But as soon as we move a little bit down this process, now all of a sudden we need more staff. So that's just, I'm just wondering about the timing of this, given that we just had this major change in staffing. And other than that, I do support having the wastewater system being kept on a moratorium, because It doesn't seem like there's much of it included in here, and it doesn't seem like the regional district really has any experience with it. Thank you.
And obviously more to come. All right, we are now reconvening the vote. Is there any opposition? Are you, pause, you guys okay? We on it? Just a sec, please, everyone.
So we would reconvene the vote on rescinding the existing.
Procedurally, you don't have to note any of that. We've literally just had discussion.
I just wanted it clear that we
Yeah.
were pausing the vote, so you don't need to record
Yeah,
that.
you don't need to record
Okay,
that.
so just, okay, so is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion carries. And you have the motion? Just a second, we'll just make sure we catch up, and then Director Jackman.
I'm assuming it's just this. So we're rescinding the existing
So without the end further.
Yeah.
You can- Okay, so
So we-
we've just passed,
the top thing.
so we've done this.
Yep.
Now we just passed this just now. Without,
Okay, it has been rescinded.
it had, this motion that is rescinding passed.
Okay, so we're good. Nothing's changed.
I think the only thing you want to do is you need to ask staff to get you the original motion that we're rescinding. That should
Yeah,
be
we
in the
got
minutes.
that. We got that. We'll get that. That's
And-
rescinded here.
But the existing moratorium on acquiring the new systems be rescinded passed.
What we rescinded is the original motion that put the moratorium in place, which was from
Correct.
2012. So you just need to be able to reference that original motion, which the motion would also have a number as to when that was passed.
Just as-
That's what we rescinded. So you need that original motion at some point in the
Is
minutes.
that in the report, Alex?
Okay. I'm sorry, say again.
Is the original motion in the report?
The moratorium motion.
Yes, my computer didn't just freeze.
Yeah, I lost connection to it.
Yeah, I can't answer
So,
that. So leave
I'll
it
get
as
that
I
to you.
leave it
Okay.
as-
When you do the minutes, it's just that's what we
We'll find
rescinded.
it.
So we've moved and seconded both.
Both of them
Both of them.
separately.
Separate.
Yeah, and then moratorium is going to be just at comma, whatever the moratorium motion was,
Okay, thank you.
2012, okay? So that would be that.
You have Jackman.
Just give me a second, computer locked out and
It is, yes.
So you can get that to Emma for the minutes, the name of the motion and at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. So
Yes.
I'd like to ask staff if they feel they're going to be comfortable for the next couple of months. And I think Director Graham, again, just referred to this. Because there are two more things we can do. As we discussed, we can make it crystal clear that we're not interested in hearing any wastewater applications because we don't have a liquid waste management plan. So it's kind of, it's not very fair to suggest to people they can do all their work and all their costing and stuff to say they want to transfer a system. We couldn't take it if we wanted to. We don't have a liquid waste management plan. And I think what was signaled was it could take a couple of years at least to have one of those approved. So that's a piece I'd like to know if staff is comfortable not having a definitive statement about the future of wastewater applications. And then the other question to staff is,
Could you pause for a sec, stop?
sure,
Answer is
Sure.
yes. The answer is yes.
So the first question, staff are okay with the moratorium on wastewater being rescinded and they will deal with anything that comes forward. Your second question, sir.
okay, so thanks. The second question is, would somebody presume that the paperwork they've already put in is an application for a drinking water system acquisition? Whereas the new policy will have them do a lot more. They've got a lot more steps to take. So without setting a
Let's
date.
just, no, pause for a
Okay.
second. We get
Okay.
just a second. Alex, a current or Uli? Oh, Uli, sorry.
We would consider everything we received to date as an expression of interest, not as a
Not an
formal application. Because the corner posts, the acquisition matrix are not necessarily known to these applicants. So that's something we want to clearly discuss with an applicant so we get an as complete as possible application in order to increase the chance for applicants to actually be successful.
Good answer. Expression of interest. If you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that. Thanks.
Very good. Thanks, Director Jackman. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to chunk it to issues we could deal with, like not. So anyway, thank you very much. And that is the first issue, yeah.
Have we done the three motions?
The third one would be putting, if you feel so, put on if moratorium on wastewater systems.
Wastewater.
We're not doing that.
If that's.
We're not doing that?
No, we're not doing that. Not needed.
Okay,
So we're taking a break. So we'll meet since we're gonna meet at 5 after. So thank you. We'll just pause the meeting and just catch our breath. Thank you, everyone. Do you wanna mute?
Yeah.
We're gonna mute.
I'll get you one. What do you want in it?
Just a bit of cream.
Okay.
Half a cup and a bit of cream. And a shot of something. Are we unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Thank you, everyone. We're not talking about alcohol, honest. Honest. Okay, so we'll reconvene the meeting at 10:05. Oh, it is 10:05. Good, on time. Thanks, everyone, for that discussion. This is the value of our committee work is exemplified by the last hour. Just fantastic work. We've straightened out the minutes, we think, so as I pause things and this, that, and the other thing, so just fantastic work. So we'll move on to agenda item number 4, and Natalie, please update us with this, that, and the other thing, advisories and such.
Yeah, so this is the January 1st to April 30th Water System Advisories Report. There wasn't too much going on, just the regular, Burton, Sanka, and Woodbury Village permanent advisories and boil water notices. And then there was 4 boil water notices issued, all related to water main repairs and the work that's happening in Duhamel mostly. Some stuff in Erickson and Weimer. I could mention that just after April 30th, we did downgrade the boil water notice in Woodbury Village to a water quality advisory, which was nicely done. Exciting. Very
Good.
yeah.
And if I may explain briefly, so we have a new treatment plant there. It's working as it should, but in order to totally lift even the advisory, we need to have 6 months of operation with satisfactory
okay.
quality criteria before Interior Health allows us to fully lift the restrictions.
Yeah, and I can say all of these boil water notices have since been lifted, except the one in Duhamel.
Except Duhamel.
Yeah, which is still in place until the project has come to an end.
After a project that's such as that, major project, how long do you wait? Like how much, what do you need, what's the process of lifting it once they closed everything up, sealed it up, and it's done?
It's 2 clean tests, 24 hours apart. So 2 consecutive clean tests, 24 hours apart.
In some cases like here, we may have left it on because we know we have several tie-ins and it doesn't make sense to lift it and put it 2 days later back.
Yeah, but once the everything's done, then a couple of clean, okay, great. Okay, yes, go ahead, Director Watson.
I recall the 2-point process, which was systems online, and then it's like a commissioning process, which I think is the 2 tests. And then, so that gives you the first, like you've passed the 2 tests and now you're in the initial phase, and then it's a 6-month clean test, and then you get the next clearance.
Yeah, is this with regard to the Woodbury Village?
Just following the process, as I understand it, based on Woodbury.
So
Yeah.
these are 2 different processes.
Two
One is
never mind,
construction related
Yeah.
for a
Okay.
pipe replacement, and Woodbury is a bit different for a new treatment plant.
I'll try and listen.
That's all good. Okay.
We heard it here.
Graham just unmuted, so I'm not sure if she wanted to.
Director Graham, would you like to
You
comment?
unmuted by mistake. You went to shut your camera off. Sorry, I unmuted by mistake. I was just telling Henny I gotta go put some eye drops in. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay,
There you go.
we'll carry on. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, Natalie, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's all there is to report on that first third of the year.
Thank you very much. We've had comments. I see no more. We're moving on to number 5. Alexandra, in regard to capital project update.
Thank you, Director. I just wanted to make a note that per Director Jackman's request, I've added some abbreviations and some clarification
Nice.
around what
You got a thumbs up.
what we always kind of skim over and fail to fully explain what those abbreviations are. So yeah, this is just our summary of capital projects and other maintenance items, larger maintenance items in the system. I'm not going to go through point by point, but I will speak to one in particular, and that is the Duhamel project that is actually finishing up today with the removal of the asbestos cement pipe in the ground. So that was a section of water main that, a 4-inch section of water main that was replaced with industry standard PVC. Director Newell, you had brought up some interesting questions that I wanted to just sort of speak to with that project. We were looking at using that project as a bit of a yardstick on what we might consider the costing for asbestos cement pipe removal. So I'll throw out some figures there, but I want to caveat that with that project in Duhamel, there was a couple of elements that may have potentially reduced the cost there for that AC pipe removal. And that is the easy access and the uncomplicated room. There's no trees, no buildings that we need to contend with, no. So it's a relatively straightforward wide berth of land that we could access and remove that AC pipe. So that the cost for that for the contractor was $180 per linear meter for that AC pipe removal versus what we had received in quotes from both the contractor and from a consultant for other areas, one being the Balfour Wharf Road, which was $370 per linear meter, and then the West Robson project, which is currently, there's a change of scope in there, but that was $470 per linear meter. So that's a consultant's estimate. So the contractor 370 in Balfour was an actual cost that was presented to us to remove that pipe. So I'm thinking we could probably look at Duhamel being, kind of the easy access, not a real complicated extraction, that type of thing at 180, and then 370 being, we have to deal with trees, pavement, buildings, that type of thing. So we're probably in between those two for the average costing of removing asbestos cement pipe. I want to just state that, again, it is a significant issue in regional district-owned water systems, this removal of AC pipe. Duhamel still has 1.9 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe to remove. And in overall regional district systems, we have over 40 kilometers of asbestos cement pipe to remove. So it's going to be an issue that's going to come up again and again. But at least now we have sort of an idea rather than just sort of, taking contractors and consultants costing. We've actually done a project that now we can look at and potentially enter into our asset management plan to come up with some real figures for what we should be putting aside to remove this pipe.
Supplement, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
What I wanted to add to is another aspect to this came up very recently is that in a small community, there is the intention of laying fiber optics, and their design would go right over top our existing old asbestos line. So it just shows that the very narrow shared public road infrastructure with many other utilities is an ongoing issue, and that there is good reason to remove asbestos line in regards to future use of that public corridor.
Good point. A follow-up question,
Yes.
where did they dispose of this asbestos pipe?
I believe it's at Udashenia that they have to double bag and transport it to Udashenia, where it's then the process. Uli knows better than I do, but yes.
So does the cost include the cost of disposal?
Yes, that's.
And supplemental? Did the contractor lose money on the deal? That part of the contract, do we think? Or like sometimes they misbid things and have to eat it. Do you have a sense of that?
I think on, if I may, on the overall project, they were very tight, I believe. I don't know that the asbestos pipe removal is one. This location, they may have slightly underbid because digging in alluvial fan isn't the biggest, most fun with small equipment.
Yeah.
So that component is there, but I think if anything, they may have struggled staying within their margins on the overall project, given that there were own lines there and gas line there and whatever else. So some complexities that may have been a little bit more than they anticipated, but I can't speak for them losing money, but it may have eaten maybe on their profit margin.
Yeah, just wondering how accurate that number might be. So we, at least it's something we can work with. Director Weatherhead, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I would just like to ask staff where we would be at the UV system for Focure. I thought that we were starting that in this year. Am I correct, or have I missed something?
Go ahead, Alex.
Through the chair. Prior to us looking at installing UV treatment, we would have to run a pilot. Currently, the water conditions of Focure do not support UV treatment at certain times of the year. So there's a couple of different approaches to that. Right now, we need to meet a minimum of 80% UVT for UV treatment to work. At times of the year, whether it's a heavy rain event or freshet, Focure water dips well below that. So we would need to do some sort of pre-treatment. Currently, we're looking at a couple of different options and running pilots at that water treatment facility to see what would work best. Whether it be a chemical addition of a coagulant or whether we do anion exchange. We're still looking at developing those treatment pilots, but that water quality issue would have to be resolved before we install UV treatment.
Go ahead, Uli, and then we'll take the rest on offline.
Because it's not in the abbreviations, UVT is UV light transmissivity.
I'll add that
So
Thank you. And you can take it offline for a greater update there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
happy to answer questions.
Now, we've got a stranger on our screen, some guy with headphones in named Chris. Well, his name's not there, but I recognize him, Chris. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? Welcome.
Thank you, Director Newell. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I'm super happy to be joining the team by the end of the month, but I'm really excited to be catching up on some of the important business that Water Utilities is doing right now. Probably going to be a bit of a fly on the wall for this meeting. I don't know if you want to give me a little, or if you want me to give a bit of an introduction.
Yes, please.
Sure, yeah. I guess most of you will know me as the building manager. But I'm transitioning into the utility services manager role, I believe on the 27th. Of course, bring that building knowledge from leading that department for the last couple of years. But the majority of my experience is actually in water and water utility services. So I bring about 15 years of experience in infrastructure planning, watershed studies and hydrology, and then also water utility operations, City of Nelson, Halton Region and Hamilton, Ontario, as well as consulting, have kind of provided the bulk of my experience in water services. And actually, I guess it goes all the way back to first job in water was actually in British Columbia, studying surface water, groundwater interactions in Prince Rupert and working with the Forest Service. So I hope to leverage all that knowledge and my great team and really bring you guys what you need to in this role.
Well, thank you. for that intro, and many of us that I know are excited, probably all of us, to have you part of this team. I just wonder if any directors have a question they'd like to put Chris on the spot with on his first half meeting. No, you got out of that, Chris. So,
That's the first and last time.
first and last time, of course, but
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to working for all of you and with all of you.
thanks very much, and thanks for being able to make it online after your trip back from Creston today or wherever.
I'm still here, but I'm like I said, I'll be a fly on the wall and listen to everything today.
Great, thanks, Chris. All right, so that's water operations and capital project update. And of course, as always, you may go offline and ask staff for any updates on projects. And so service summaries and et cetera. Is there any staff going to talk about that or anything?
What did you want to speak to?
No, I actually only here to answer questions if you have particular questions to sections in the service statements.
Yes, and of course, as always, you can go offline and ask staff about any questions that may not be pertainable to all of us. That's a polite way of wording that. I think that wasn't bad, eh? Yes, you may go offline for those that are particularly of interest to you only is maybe.
Jackman on the list.
Yes, Director Jackman. Of general interest, what would you like to
Absolutely general interest because, and it's really maybe more a question for finance. But on the statements, I see that on the individual services, water services, there's no salaries booked as of the first 3 months. Whereas under A103, we're at 35% of the salary budget in 25% of the year. So what's going on? Are we parking all of the salaries in A103 and then journal vouchering them to individual services later? And if that's the case, is there some way we can avoid that and have them coded differently so they go month by month directly to the service that they actually belong in?
Thank you.
I can try to answer this. Yes, this is actually the standard procedures we have for years in place. It is a bit difficult. What it is the administrative time that operational staff spends in the office that is not directly allocated out to a water system. So it is gathered and accumulates in A103 and is then charged out back to the water systems in the, is it showing in the budget? Transfer to other services section under general admin fee. There's a transfer to, under transfer to other services, 59,500. That's where that cost comes back once it's calculated to the water system. So there's actually a staffing component that comes in under these transfers instead of the regular labor code. So that's the current process. We did look at potentially doing this a couple times in the year instead of just end of year. I'm not sure where we are with this right now, but it is quite a process to calculate that number. So that's why we haven't done it more frequently during the year.
Supplemental?
Yeah, just a sec. Alex has something to add, Director Jackman.
Sorry, through the chair to Director Jackman. I think you might be referring to the year-to-date actuals in the salaries component up on the operating expenses. Is that?
In A103.
I think, were you referring to in general all the water systems or A103 specifically?
Both. I wanted to know if they were tied. Uli's explained he's using the old formula. The A103 is transferred later. That's fine. That still doesn't answer why we haven't booked the individual water system salaries for 3 months into the year. Separate issue, I guess.
Can I
Yeah,
speak to
please
that?
go ahead.
Yeah, so through the chair. So this is something, that was brought as a request to us, from the finance department last August. And so it does, land in A103 and then, the journal entry. So rather than, payroll delineating the hours and salaries allocated to each individual water system, it now goes through finance as journal entries. So we don't really have much control over when they do those journal entries. But it is through the finance department now that, as of August of last year, that that salary component of the individual water systems is calculated.
Director Jackman, if you can talk to Yev and.
I will. It seems like an
Yeah.
unnecessary complication but that, of course, if you don't drive the train, it's just observation. Journal vouchers take extra time.
Thank you, and thank you for that. Anything else on the service statements? Seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Any comments on the correspondence of how how there is support for us lifting the moratorium, if I'll put it that way?
Shocking.
That's out of order.
Of course, the province is happy we're lifting it.
Yes, they're very happy that the concept of us taking on more. Uli has a comment. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
Uli.
but I think there's some signals that for certain irrigation districts, there may potentially be funding available for this process. So this is something we need to investigate, negotiate going forward. So yeah, more to come hopefully in regards to.
Yes, go ahead,
Support
Director.
for that process.
Director, Chair Watson, go ahead, please.
I was looking back to Zoom. I think when we review the policy, we should separate out those that come to us voluntarily and those the province is requiring us to take on, because that's your, what do you call that? Canary in the coal mine. That'll be where it gets really heavy, because the writing's been on the wall for a long time. What are all the sayings I could use? Essentially, the province will be like, great, here you go, and require us to take some on.
Yeah.
So the policy needs to identify how we handle required ones versus the voluntary ones that come forward.
Requests. Go ahead, Uli.
In
Thank you.
fact, I think our plan and hopefully the future policy protects us to some degree, because the matrix clearly outlines what needs to be met in order to become a regional district system. So if the system itself is not able or willing, then it would have to come from the province in some form to bring this system up to the level that it actually meets the criteria to be considered or even being a favorite for us to be taken over. I don't think there's a step where the province can just say, here, take it.
And
From
sorry,
our policy. Yes, go ahead, carry on.
to clarify, I understand we've just approved the acquisition process, so that puts a lot of checks and balances in place. What I'm referencing is the cap on how many we're willing to consider in a year, because there's going to be required ones versus voluntary ones. So those need to be identified separately, like how many are we willing to, and that needs to be in policy, because it will protect us from the province to be like, sorry, you've already given us the one this year to review, that's our cap, see you later.
Big carrot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bigger the carrot you can put the policy, the more we might be able to consider, AKA fund our staffing, and we'll consider more. So I think that we need to identify the cap related to voluntary versus what the province is asking us to review.
Agreed.
Thank you.
the complexity continues in water. And the only comment before I go to the public, before we go in camera, and we do have a pretty solid time stop, right? When two people,
11 o'clock.
we have half an hour, so we gotta hustle. My only comment is, holy mackerel, how did we ever function without the Water Services Committee for all those years? It's unbelievable. This committee, the work we do each and every 2 months, phenomenal. So thank you for that. Thank you for the correspondence. I'll now turn it to public. Is there any public? I see observer. Is there any question, comment that anyone would like to make from the public? We are going in camera soon, so we will be asking people to leave that aren't allowed to be in the in-camera portion. Seeing none, we will now begin the process of moving the motion, closing it to the public. So this is the recommendation, which is in accordance, in the opinion of the board and in accordance with section 90 of the community charter and all of the subsequent comments, that we are moving this meeting in camera. We are closing it to the public. May I have a motion to?
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, we are now there. So I don't know who observer is, but we will.
We might need to remove them
We
from the
might,
meeting.
as observer, if you could leave, or else we will, have to do it. I don't, maybe you're not hearing us, so can we do that, Emma?
Yeah, I can remove them.
I'll put the sign on the door and then we'll just lock the meeting.